Hello, hello. Welcome back to DMW Sports. We are back counting down the top 32 teams in the National Football League to preview the 2025-2026 season. Happy to be back with you. Obviously, I'm DMac. We have a fun one today, in my personal opinion. Obviously, this team is further down the rankings, coming in at number 30. The Tennessee Titans. A lot of excitement around the franchise. Number one overall pick, one of the least talked about number one overall picks, Mr. Cam Ward out of Miami, Incarnate Ward in Washington State himself. New stadium on the way, some interesting things, new GM, new head coach. I'm ready to jump into this. Not new head coach, Brian Callahan, we've seen for a year now. But I'm ready to jump into this and kind of talk about this team and see where the direction is headed. Talk a little bit about what their offseason came and why there should be some optimism for Tennessee Titans fans. Let's get straight into it. So we'll start by reviewing their offseason and talking a little bit about the Tennessee Titans in general as far as what this team looks like. And starts with their subtractions. Harold Landry, the third, was a staple in this defense for a long time. Ultimately, moved on to New England Patriots, joined his old coach up there in New England, and Mike Vrabel. Joey Aruzier, who came in over from Cincinnati Bengals, trying to restart his career. Unfortunately, did not really take a hold as far as being able to help what was a very bad secondary last year in Tennessee. Jerome Baker ended up moving on to the Cleveland Browns, as we just kind of talked about in our previous video. Nick Westbrook and Keeney, who actually had some really fun fantasy weeks, went on a touchdown streak to end last year, ultimately moved on as well. Nothing too crazy as far as the subtractions. Of course, this is one of the least talented teams in National Football League, why they had the number one pick ultimately. And they sought out to try and add some key players in some key spots that I think will ultimately help them. Chief among those, Dan Moore Jr., Kevin Zeitler, Cody Barton. Obviously, are along that offensive line for Dan Moore Jr. and Kevin Zeitler. Kevin Zeitler, veteran guard, a guy that can come in and just be a stabilizing force coming over from Detroit Lions, obviously a part of a really good offensive line there for the last few years. Dan Moore Jr., a mid-tier tackle. We don't have to say that anything more. He obviously got a significant contract from that perspective, and I'll talk a little bit more about that deal later on and how I feel about it. Ultimately speaking, helps to stabilize this offensive line that did have its struggles last year from that standpoint. But it's not a bad idea, in my opinion, to have veterans along the offensive line with the young guys that they've added, which we'll talk about a little bit as well. And then now what you're trying to transition into of what this Tennessee Titans team can look in this next era with Cam Ward at the helm. Also added Van Jefferson for a little bit of wide receiver depth, competent wide receiver that will certainly help. Like I mentioned earlier, Cody Barton, inside linebacker, the second level for this team was very bad last year. They need that extra help. We'll see if he's able to provide it. Draymond Jones, a little bit of edge rusher help as well, coming over from Seattle. Now, getting into the draft prospect, Cam Ward, number one quarterback in the class for me. No issues as far as being able to go out and draft him at number one. I think that he has a real chance to go out here and really be able to put his stamp as far as this franchise is concerned. Where is the ceiling at? I think that there's a little bit question marks there. We'll talk about that a little bit, but I do think that he justified that first number one overall pick as well. Olu Adejo, a nice edge prospect that I thought could be able to be an asset for an odd front team, obviously like the Tennessee Titans want to be. Makes sense. Kevin Winston Jr. will help out as far as the secondary is concerned. Working out of that safety spot, he's one of the guys at Penn State that I thought actually had some nice upside as well. So I'm interested to see how things end up progressing for him in this defense. Alec Ayomor out of Stanford, a polarizing wide receiver prospect, was not my personal favorite for where they ended up getting him and what they were going to ask him to do and come along, in my opinion, kind of slowly, given the fact that they do have Tyler Lockett on this team, Van Jefferson, and Calvin Ridley as the top three wide receivers currently. I think it makes sense to be able to add him. And then I'll mention Jackson Slater, a little bit down the board of who ended up getting taken, but one of my interior offensive line sleepers in this class out of Sacramento State. I think he has the tools to develop, and the fact that he gets to learn from Kevin Zeitler, I think will be very good for him. Obviously learning under Brian Callahan in general as well. And look, as far as the team direction is concerned, bad, but hopeful. And I think they're going in the right direction, and specifically going in the right direction and building it the right way, specifically when you talk about the offensive line trenches, when you look at that additions list as well. So good things to hopefully come for the Titans. I don't think it's going to be great this year, but good things to come as well. And we'll talk about that a little bit more. But let's start with the Cam Ward discussion, because I think it's obviously the most pressing thing to find out. Him in his rookie action, how has he looked so far during preseason, and what to expect from him in his rookie year and beyond. So let's go ahead and dive into Cam Ward here. Obviously, again, number one quarterback in the class, number one overall pick, number one on his jersey. Out of Miami, had a really good year for Miami. And I think you talk about some of the traits that you see for Cam Ward: the ability to have poise in the pocket, a live arm. I would not necessarily say it's an elite, like awesome arm, like the Josh Allen's, Patrick Mahomes of the world. But I think it is just a step below that. It is a great arm because he can absolutely fire it in there. You want to see a little bit more touch on a consistent basis, but the ways in which Cam Ward plays, I think, are going to benefit for what this offensive line really should look like in front of him as well. And we'll run through some of the preseason clips that we've seen so far of him operating in this Titans offense. As far as expectations, I don't expect him to light it on fire. I don't expect that you'll see a Jaden Daniels type of season, just because there's not necessarily that rushing floor that Daniels also came in with. I think Daniels was also a more polished passer, but Cam Ward has the ability, make no mistake, to get the ball in the hands of guys like Calvin Ridley, guys that I'll talk about a little bit later on, and Okonkwo, obviously Tyler Lockett and Van Jefferson coming over. There are going to be opportunities for Cam Ward to be able to create some plays, specifically to Calvin Ridley, who was one of my favorite fantasy targets, and where he's going around the fifth or sixth round. I think that Cam Ward can be a top 10 quarterback in the National Football League. Can he be a top five guy? I think that's a little bit rich, but I do think that he can be that top 12, top 10 guy because of his ability as far as throwing the football and that poise in the pocket, his ability to really shake off contact in the pocket as well. There were some aspects of making sure his mind catches up, which of course is true for all rookie quarterbacks, but he also played with such a laid back attitude kind of in at Miami. When the bullets start flying, when he starts having to have chaos within the pocket, how is he going to deal with that is going to be a major question mark as far as how far his development ends up getting. I think the big key, again, like I just said, though, the Titans and the way that the way in which they've built this team already to insulate him from an offensive line perspective is a massive, massive accomplishment from that aspect. And before we end up getting into the roster and things of that nature, like, it is very important that Cam Ward and any rookie quarterback from this perspective, and I think this is something that always has to be emphasized, you have to invest in the offensive line to make them have a chance to develop. I think that hurt guys like Bryce Young early on, and why you saw that when he came back in and actually took a breather, he looked better because the poise could come back in. And he didn't feel like he was always under pressure. I think you saw that. Obviously, Caleb Williams last year took an historic sack number because he was just getting free rusher after free rusher sent at him. And some of it was obviously on Caleb, but some of it was also just the terrible offensive line and terrible offensive system in place too. And again, the Patriots protected Drake May accordingly with Jacoby Brissett. So I don't think that's the case for the Titans. I think they've done a good job insulating him in the offensive line, and Cam Ward has a chance to have a solid rookie year. We'll see how he progresses throughout the rest of his future. That I do think can land him in the top 12 or top 10 amongst quarterbacks in the National Football League. So let's talk about this offense that Mr. Mike Bogronski has had a chance to kind of build in his first offseason here amongst the Carolina Panthers. And I think that it's important to, again, emphasize the thing that I've been talking about, insulating the offensive line to make sure that Cam Ward is in a place that he can have success on a consistent basis. And that's a big piece of this. Again, look at those additions: Dan Moore, Kevin Zeitler, being able to add that veteran presence. Jackson Slater, I think, to be able to learn under Kevin Zeitler is a really key portion of this. Peter Skoronski, I thought, had a solid year at the guard position, and good that they'll be able to keep him right there. I'll talk about J.C. Latham in a little bit, but big thing for Latham to be able to roll over from the left tackle to a right tackle position because of the addition of Dan Moore. I think J.C. Latham will look much more comfortable over that right side, and this is actually a kind of a common theme about some of the tackles taken in the first round a year ago. If you look at Tyrese Fuaga, where we talked about as well, J.C. Latham, Tyrese Fuaga, those guys are breakout candidates because I think they're moving from the left to right side, in which they'll be a lot more comfortable from that aspect too. As far as the wide receiver core is concerned, like I talked about, Lockett, Ridley, Jefferson, veteran guys know where to be on a consistent basis. Very important from that standpoint to give Cam Ward consistent looks within the system, saying, hey, I don't need to deal with a whole bunch of rookie guys that don't know where they're running. Cam Ward now is a guy that was experienced, obviously, in college. He understands, hey, these guys are going to be on time and on tempo where they need to be within the system, and for me to distribute the ball accordingly. Kyler Dyke, Alec Ardmore, guys that can continue to develop. Obviously, Xavier Restrepo, Cam Ward's fellow Miami teammate. How those guys progress, we'll see. But I like the idea and the approach for being able to insulate with more veterans in that wide receiver core as well. Get to the tight end room. Gunnar Helm, Texas tight end that they ended up drafting. I didn't mention him, but I think that it's a good tight end pick to be a nice compliment to what Okonkwo can bring to the table. And Okonkwo is one of my breakout candidates as well. We'll talk about him in a little bit, but incredibly athletic. Finally has a quarterback to operate with. I like where things are going from that standpoint. Last but not least, running back position. Tony Pollard has continued to kind of weather the storm, has not necessarily been efficient last year within this offense as he's getting up there in age a little bit, showing some pass protection improvements, which is how veteran running backs stay in the league. Tajay Spears, unfortunately, did have an ankle injury during the preseason. We'll see we'll see if he can get back there for week one. But he brings that explosive element to the backfield. So we'll see a little bit, obviously a combination that makes a lot of sense. Nothing crazy alarming, but obviously could be improved upon from that standpoint as well. And we'll move on to the defensive side of the ball right here. So as far as the defensive side of the ball is concerned, this is the one that still needs a lot of work to be done. You look up front, Jeffrey Simmons, veteran, still being a top 10 interior defensive lineman in the National Football League. T'Vondre Sweat, who I thought as a young nose tackle really showed some impressive things, and we'll talk about him in the breakout section as well. Sebastian Joseph Day is serviceable. It gets kind of late early there as far as you're talking about the defensive line depth. Arden Key on the outside, Draymond Jones, obviously, like I said, coming over for Seattle. We'll see what they can kind of provide as that outside edge rush. Again, I am excited to see what Odejo can do as he continues to progress as a rookie out of UCLA too. That was a little bit more of a third round, fourth round type of edge rusher prospect. Ended up going in the second round here. See how he ends up progressing. That's their hope for being able to get a little bit of juice off the edge in that aspect of it. Again, Cody Barton trying to help the inside linebacker position with James Williams Sr. I don't have a lot of high hopes from that standpoint. A little sneaky Curtis Jacobs there. We'll see if he can kind of break through. Obviously, he was with the Chiefs as a UDFA, moved on to New England, and now with the Titans. And we'll see if he ends up making the team and see if he can make an impact too. Look at the secondary that struggled a lot last year. And honestly, I'm concerned because I don't think it necessarily got a whole lot better. I will mention Kevin Winston Jr. out of Penn State. Again, I think that he has an opportunity to break in and be a real starting safety in this class and, or I say in this roster. And I think certainly for the Titans, he could be a guy that progresses and has a really good career as a safety as well. I liked him coming out of Penn State. L'Jarius Sneed got the big contract, obviously, coming off of his great year for Kansas City. It's going to be a question mark if he's healthy and if he can bounce back to the level. Sounds like he's going to be ready for week one, so that's something to be looked out for from that aspect as well. Obviously, took on Xavier Woods as well to add to that safety room. Still got Roger McCreary. Again, secondary still lacking a little bit as far as this roster is concerned. And ultimately, I won't have any rankings for the head coach and GM, just not enough for me as far as being able to give a real grade in that aspect of it. But hey, Mike Bergonzi, like we did in the offseason, Brian Canahan, I thought he did a solid job with the offensive line last year. We'll see how things progress here for Brian Canahan in year two and Mike Bergonzi in year one officially from that aspect. Talk about the breakouts. Like I mentioned earlier, T'Vondre Sweat. I thought that you saw the athleticism at his size. He got a lot of questions coming out of Texas, like what the work ethic look like. Is he overweight, et cetera, et cetera. He showed to be a really athletic nose tackle guy, and the Titans obviously took him early in the second round of last year's draft, and it made a lot of sense why they ended up doing so. He showed out, was able to create a lot of run stuff, was able to show a little bit of pass rushing stops as well, moving well for a guy of his size. I think that T'Vondre Sweat can continue to build himself into one of the best nose tackles in the National Football League, if not even better, given the fact that he has a kind of freakish athleticism. And obviously, him playing next to Jeffrey Simmons and being able to learn from him is a big piece of this. So I like the upside for T'Vondre Sweat in the future from that standpoint, too. So let's talk about my breakout candidate on the offensive side of the ball, Mr. Okonkwo, somebody that has 99th percentile athleticism at the tight end position, somebody that has been in the league for a few years now. This is something that happens with tight ends specifically is these guys will come in really athletic, but they still need to really understand the NFL, understand how to play the position, unless you're, just an absolute freak, like a guy like Trey McBride, Sam Laporta, Brock Bowers of sorts as well. But these guys, usually you get to year 3, year 4, that athleticism is still there, and then the mind for the game really starts to catch up. And I think that for this opportunity, in addition to that normal timeline for tight ends to break out, it applies to Okonkwo, but also the fact that I believe that he's going to have the best quarterback play of his time in the National Football League. In addition to that, I like the fact that they are able to use him as a big target, a big athletic target for Cam Ward to throw those fireballs that he likes to throw out there as well. Hit him all over the field. I think Okonkwo has a chance to really break out. And you see the route running chops, and he understands how to sit down and zone as well. Has soft hands to be able to haul in those bullet passes. And the big thing is he also has the ability to be really comfortable with the ball in his hands, to be able to take things to the house. And you saw that on the previous Texans play. He has the ability to create yards after the catch. And so if you get him on the move and you give him a little bit of daylight, he can shake off some tacklers, he can accelerate and take it to the house. So again, the ability to have all of those skills, now sometime in the National Football League, to understand how to play the position, and that athleticism still being present alongside getting the best quarterback play of his career. I like the Okonkwo breakout, and you look for him in fantasy as a guy that could be a top 8 tight end, even with the opportunities that could be presented to him from that standpoint. So we'll move on to my main concern, and this does come with the caveat that, hey, we got to see how things end up progressing, and it does come down to L'Jarius Sneed and kind of the health of this secondary in general. I think this defense is going to struggle. I don't think that the front seven outside of the Simmons and Sweat combination is going to have enough to really protect the secondary that I think still has a lot of holes, and that's even with L'Jarius Sneed is healthy from that standpoint. So again, I think it's going to be tough sledding on the defensive side of the ball coming up on this season. That's why I gave him a D+ grade personally going through the roster. I think that the offensive grade is maybe more a C-. I like the veteran insulation on that side of the ball, but I am concerned as far as what the defense looks like, specifically from a secondary perspective, and we'll see what ends up happening as far as that's concerned. So my hot take for the Titans is that Dan Moore Jr. is justified to get the money that the Titans end up giving him. And the reason why I say this is it's important to make sure that your quarterback has the opportunity to develop as a young, a young guy coming into the National Football League, dealing with everything the defenses are going to throw at you. And obviously you're going to see some of these preseason clips in which Cam Ward has time to operate. To be able to settle in and be comfortable from that perspective is a massive piece of this. And the Titans approach the offseason properly with Mike Bergonzi's offensive trenches focused, as far as bringing in Kevin Zeitler, who's a veteran, to shore up the interior offensive line, bringing in Dan Moore to then shift J.C. Latham over to the right side where he'll be a little bit more comfortable. In my opinion, left tackle is the most scarce resource in the National Football League, and they were justified to give him that money to make sure that their quarterback has a chance to develop in this crucial year one, and to not really put him out there to die, as we've seen with other quarterbacks as well in the National Football League. All right. As for my bold prediction, it does have to do with my breakout candidate, specifically on the offensive side of the ball. Okonkwo, I think, is a guy that can go over 800 yards, have 5+ touchdowns. And again, that'll put you in that tight end 8 range as far as fantasy is concerned. But I do think that he can have himself a really good season as far as the Tennessee Titans, and specifically, again, getting the best quarterback play he has so far out of Cam Ward. And as far as the record prediction, of course, it's not going to be great. I won't lie to you guys as far as that is concerned. I do have them 4-13. Again, not many wins. I think the defense side of the ball is a real concern. Has a lot of holes on it, particularly in that secondary. But again, the direction of the team is in the right place. They're bad, but they're hopeful. Cam Ward should be able to operate and continue to progress without being under constant fire because of the work that they've done in the offensive trenches. I like Calvin Ridley to go out there and have himself a nice year as well. I like the veterans and wide receiver in general to be able to help out Cam Ward. But ultimately, not many wins for this Titans that are coming in ranked at 30 as far as our power rankings are concerned. But once again, do appreciate everybody for coming through. Make sure to come on by for the rest of the power ranks. Again, got 29 teams for more to go. Looking forward to talking to it with you guys as well. Like the video, subscribe to DMW Sports. We are at DMW Sports on YouTube, Twitter, and TikTok. Sports DMW on Instagram. Make sure you guys check out some of our shorts and reels that we got going up there. And it won't just be season previews. We got some other things coming up. Quarterback rankings, a little bit WNBA talk, college football talk. We'll have that sprinkled in to get closer in that. A little bit of tennis as the U.S. Open final major of the year also gets underway.